What's up YouTube, Dal here from Zephyr War Games, and I was presented with the challenge of making a branded deck that can compete without Bestial LUBELLION. I've also tried to keep it as cheap as I possibly can, which is why the title says budget, because we're taking away straight away a £60 card that you need at like 1 or 2 at the very least. I will show you some other budget alternatives if there are some cards in the main or extra that are a little bit too costly for you, and keep in mind that there are some reprints of some of these cards coming soon as well. So with all of that out of the way, if you want to see more branded content, especially a max rarity one, trust me, I've been working hard on that, and some more updates alongside more combos, test stands, you name it, smash that like button, get above 50 likes in the first 24 hours, and I will gladly bring that for you. So, we start off with, now keep in mind the budget does not include the rarities, okay? I'm not going to go out of my way to get lower rarity stuff just to do a video like this, but you get the idea from the list. Triple Aluba, pretty straightforward and simple on that one. I'm still at 2 Albaz. I think 2 Albaz is kind of nice. The only reason I put 3 in is because of the Fusion Destiny package, Fusion Deployment package, but we're still working on that. Double Tragedy, I've gone back with 1 Drama rather than the Ad Libitum. It comes down to personal preference. Whether you want that instant negate off of Dramaturge or you want that ability to recycle your Mirror Jade is entirely up to you. However, with Bestials dipping in and out of the format, and of course Cached Heroes, Arise Heart being a full-on Macrocosmo, you might not always have the target for branding in red as well. So it's something to consider, which is why I've kind of gone with Dramaturge over the other stuff as well. For the cards you can search out off of the back of the list Albaz in its text, double Merry Courier, alongside the 1 Albion Dragon, the 1 Spring Guns Kit, and the 1 Blazing Cartesia. Now if you don't have Cartesia, I would highly advise you actually up in the count of your spoiler Agent package, just because you need to kind of replace that Fusion plays. That will then adapt to the Dust Dragon and the extra deck and everything else like that. But if I was to say what your priorities are before getting into the Bestials, I would say get to Cartesia first. I would like to think if you've already got branded, you would already have a Cartesia. And then after that, that's when you want to start looking at the next possible card, and that is the Saraniers. So, we've got LUBELLION, we've maxed out on the Saraniers. Now, obviously, if you have LUBELLION, play LUBELLION, it's still definitely worth playing. However, the challenge was to make it as budgetly viable as possible without playing LUBELLIONs, and that's where Saranier comes in. Saranier is probably your second most important card in the form of a Bestial. I know a lot of people are saying it's the most important, but personally I'd much rather see a LUBELLION that can lead me into a Saranier, because then that increases my end board, than opening up with a Saranier. However, in this particular version, we are going with 3 Saranier and the 1 Bulldrake. Again, trying to keep in mind that budget formula and budget ratios. So, which is why we've gone with probably the cheapest of the Bestial monsters themselves. Saranier might start to slowly creep up, but again, as advice for a branded deck, if you're wanting to get into this deck, the fastest and the cheapest way is to get these first and your Cartesia and build up off the back of that as well. It will just help you evolve the deck so much. Then for the remaining light targets in the deck, when we're taking out LUBELLION, I've gone with 2 Nibiru, and the reason I've gone with 2 Nibiru is because main deck in Nibiru, this format, is not actually that bad, especially with Cached Heroes not being able to kind of play around this, and a lot of other decks either not having the ability to play around it, or not expecting it game 1, so that when you drop a Nibiru on them, you completely wipe their board out, and it gives you that ability to still play while going second, which is what this deck really, really does need, because one of its lose cons is if its branded Fusion gets ashed, which is why we have the Spring Guns kit in here, and it's why we're also playing the Patchwork engine. So alternatively to that as well, another way of, when you're going second, there's more chance of your opponent having more cards to kind of stop that branded Fusion going through, which is why Nibiru in the main is kind of a good option. Alternatively, these are basically just optional board breakers. The other light targets that we do play are the 1 Light Hexil and the 1 Raz Disciple. Now, these are very specific. They are mini bricks as well, which can be a bit of an issue. But the reason we've got these is if you're going first, you go down Raz Disciple's route and you can lock your opponent out. You can also go into Light Hexil, which, of course, spoiler, will lead you into Dragoon. Now, if you don't have access to Dragoon, you cut this out straight away. That's not an issue at all. And that's where, of course, you can start putting in Ad Libitum, you put a Triple Tragedy, you can put Branded in High Spirits to lead you off of your constructs. You could also start playing around with like stuff like Shadol Schisms. You can even put Nadir Servants in as well. But keep in mind, you'll be doing that right towards the end of your plays because it locks you out of the extra deck. So there's a lot more for you to kind of consider and play around with. It is entirely up to you. These aren't cards you want to see in your hand instantly. Like, you still have the same combo that I could technically show you at the end, which is Aluba with Saranier. We'll still get you the same end board, and I'll show you that at the end of the video, just so everything's here in one go for you guys looking at this and going, right, okay, how do I play with this version? So there's a lot more for you to kind of play around with, and a lot more adaptation as well. Alongside the Raz Disciple, this will probably go down in the branded spells and traps, but because you're playing Disciple, you play the Expulsion. So this one lets you tribute a fusion monster to target 2 non-fusion monsters that are banished and or in either graveyard. So even under the cash monster, you can still do that. Special summon both monsters, 1 to each field. If you tributed a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material, you can special summon both to your field. So again, that does come up because you are playing stuff like the Rimbrum, you are playing Mirror Jade and everything else. So you've got a couple of targets to do that successfully. It's entirely up to you on what the outcome you want to be. Ideally, you want to give your opponent Raz Disciple, because when they have Raz Disciple, they technically can't summon. The only thing they can do is like, the only thing they can't tribute, they can't special summon. So the best thing to do is like switch this to attack and then try and attack. But if you're going first, you put all of your stuff in defense. That's not going to happen either. And that can also help you play around Lightning Storm. So it's entirely up to you. Obviously, giving your opponent a monster as well means they can't special summon a cash monster, which can be very, very painful and definitely really good in that particular matchup. So that's it for like the main monsters. I'm just going to clear up some space to show you the last card because it leads into our spells, and that is the Edge Imp package. Now, I've kept the Edge Imp package at a minimum, being 2 Edge Imps, 1 Patchwork and 1 Poly. If you want to increase this, you can do. That's where your space comes from, your Nibiru's, your Raz Disciple, the Expulsion, and of course the Light Hex Seal. The reason I do this is because it gives you another option should your Branded Fusion get ashed. And I do expect Ash to come back into the format, so it is something to keep your mind open to. And it's also something you could arguably put in the Drama Theatre, but I feel that this engine is going to be a little bit more consistent, a little bit better for you. And that could then also flip to the side of arguably playing another Fallen of Albaz. But where we play the Fallen of Albaz, we do also have Fusion Deployment. So let's say, for example, you normal summon a Luba and they ash that. And then you activate Fusion Deployment, you summon out your your Albaz. Then if you've got the Edge Imp package or you've got access to the Poly, you can Poly that board off. Keep in mind as well, going second, the reason that Fusion Deployment is so good is, I've already mentioned this before, but going second, imagine you activate this, right? Your opponent will then need to consider, do they ash this or do they let it go through? If it goes through, you bring out your Albaz, use Albaz to discard a card, and then straight away your opponent then needs to negate that, otherwise you're going to get a Mirror Jade without even touching Branded Fusion. After that point, if they haven't dropped to Ash Blossom, if they've let that go through, they've either eaten up a negate to stop the Albaz contact fusing, or in the form of the Shangri-La, as I've mentioned before, you're going to contact fuse with their board. So the idea would be is you activate Fusion Deployment, they can't stop that. You summon out your Albaz. Albaz effect will trigger discarding a card to contact fuse with the Arise Heart to make sure that you're no longer under a Macrocosmo. If they brought out a Fenrir, they will chain that effect to banish the Mirror Jade, and then you can chain your effect, send in as cost now that you're no longer under the macro lock, to then banish either the Fenrir in response or banish the Shangri-La, unlocking the rest of your zones. Now, so you've banished the Shangri-La, not only do you unlock the rest of the zones, but then the only thing you need to worry about is an already used effect of Fenrir. And that's you just go, okay, cool, Branded Fusion, and you can go the full Branded Fusion route to get you into a second Mirror Jade and go from there. Speaking of, triple Branded Fusion, pretty straightforward and simple on that one. Triple Branded Opening, also straightforward. 1 branded in white, 1 branded lost, 1 branded red. Red could arguably be cut now, and the reason I would say this would be cut is because you can't always guarantee there'll be a Despia or a Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard, especially under the cash matchup. But in the cash matchup, you might take this out. I'd probably keep it in for going first, but then you take it out, definitely going second, because the chances are they'll probably end on a Rise Heart, and they're going to lock your zones out. And the last 3 trap cards, apart from the Expulsion, is still the 1 Sword, the 1 Retribution, and the 1 Banishment. Arguably, again, Sword is highly considered to be cut. Now, if you were to cut Sword, it's not the end of the world, because you are still playing, or I am now playing the Brigade, the Glory Dragon, and this will get me the Mary Courier, which does the exact same thing the Sword does anyway. So arguably you could cut this out, again, adapting your playstyle. You can put Ashes in, you can put in other forms of hand traps, you can update the Biosteals, you can add in your Magnamoves, everything like that. You've got flexibility in this deck should you want to, and if you're starting off at this level, you put in the cheapest cards possible, and then you start to build and invest more money. I feel that a deck like this, considering it is like a core lore deck, and everything has been revolving around Branded, I still feel they're a bit of a distance away from being absolutely nuked on a ban list. We may see a fusion, Branded Fusion hit in the future, but that's going to be in the real long future, so I won't worry about it too much right now. Okay, so moving on to the extra deck, we'll start off with the Mirror Jade or the Albaz monsters. We are playing 2, of course, Mirror Jade. Very, very powerful card. This is your main Mac Daddy boss monster, alongside 2 Lubellion, 2 Albion, 1 Albulanatus, and then of course the 1 Rimbrum, and we are now playing the 1 Brigand. So all of these serve their purposes. The idea is that throughout your plays, the reason I've got an Albion and an Albulanatus is if during my opponent's turn or my turn or anything like that, I'm able to get both of these to the graveyard, rather than sending 2 Albions or an Albion and then something that isn't going to get me much more advantage. It will give me the ability to send an Albion and an Albulanatus. The Natus will then allow me to get any fusion spell I want, and then Albion will give me a branded spell. So I've got the best of both worlds to that, and it's entirely up to you. You can play 3 Albion if you want. It really doesn't matter. The Brigand is just to get you a Merry Courier from the deck during the end phase, and that's just ways of utilising your Dust Dragon. I'll show you that now because it's basically, might as well be an Albaz card, but it's a Cartesia card. Your Dust Dragon can send you from your main deck or your extra deck, so that's the way of how you can send your Brigand or your Albion from your extra deck to the graveyard, and then during the later part of the combo, you can still use Mirror Jade's effect, send the other one as cost, negate it with the Rimbrum, and then you're good to go again. We've then got, of course, the 1 Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. So if you don't have access to this, don't worry, it's not the end of the world. You can change it up, take it out completely, you take out the Light Hex Seal, and you're still good to go. The last 4 cards, we've got the 1 Quinteris, we've got the 1 Masquerade Blazing Dragon, the 1 Gorura, and the 1 Guardian Chimera. Now, Chimera is getting a reprint of Maze of Memory, so if you don't have access to it again, your other options are stuff like a second Masquerade Dragon, a Despian Quinteris, which Proskinian, and I really want to get this guy back into the extra deck. It's just space is a little bit tight. So Proskinian is another option to Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, and you'll only be able to resolve it if they get rid of the Dust Dragon. So it's very specific, but it's one of the ones that if your opponent doesn't know it can do that, you go into a Proskinian and you can start stealing your opponent's stuff, which is absolutely amazing. Like, kill your opponent's Rise Heart and then steal their opponent's Rise Heart. Great. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the profile. Again, I've tried to give you a couple of budget alternatives, a couple of different routes that you can kind of take the deck if you want to. It is entirely up to you. There's flex spots in the deck. And what makes this deck so good is there's so many different ways you can play it, depending on what you have access to. I've tried to keep it as budget, but I've also tried to maintain the competitive nature of the deck as well. So some of the choices might be a little bit odd if you're looking at it from a competitive standpoint, but then keep in mind as well that the task was to make it as budget as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out just because you've got everything in one. So if you're watching this as a new viewer and you're like, oh, okay, I want to know how I play this deck now, or how can the deck now operate without Lubellion, I'm going to show you, do not worry. So I'll reset the board state and we'll be back in a sec. Okay, so the ideal combo is something like this. So your Luba with your Saronir, obviously in the past it would be Lubellion, and then a random discard. And it will pretty much get you a very, very powerful end board. It does struggle and lose to stuff like Nibiru. There are plays that hurt this deck, but that's where you adapt your playstyle, read your opponent, and then adapt it for your local environment. So of course what you do is you'll start off with your Aluba. Aluba's effect will trigger, and obviously the first thing you're going to be searching, unless you've already opened it up, will always be Branded Fusion. We're then going to activate the Branded Fusion, and this will send from your deck to the graveyard your Fawn of Albaz and the 1 Merry Courier from your deck. You could do this a little bit differently if you just want to go straight into like a Masquerade Dragon because you're in game 3, or you want to go straight into a Dragoon, then of course you've got your targets there, you should know what you do. So you'd send Albaz plus the Light Hex Seal for your Dragoon, or you'd send Albaz plus Tragedy for your Masquerade Dragon. So what you're going to do is you'll resolve the Branded Fusion, you are going to summon out your Rimbrum. Try to always put them in defense if you're going first, because you never know if your opponent is playing a Lightning Storm, which can be very, very painful. Now usually this would be where the turn would pretty much stop, because you'd probably want to try and go through there. But because you've got the Saronir's effect is going to target the Merry Courier and banish that while summoning itself down. You then trigger the Merry Courier's effect. This will allow you to search out a card that lists Fallen of Albaz in its text. So your options are Cartesia, Spring Guns Kit, and the Albion Dragon. In this scenario, we are going to go for the Cartesia. You then special summon down the Cartesia. Apologies for the glare over the left-hand side. I'm trying to keep it away as possible. So you'll then special summon down the Cartesia because you do have Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard. You'll then use Cartesia's effect. Now, previously you were using Albaz to make this one, but you actually want to use Saronir here just to kind of confirm exactly what you need. So you'll fuse those two together, you'll go into your Dust Dragon. You'll then be able to go Chain Link 1 Saronir, Chain Link 2 Dust Dragon. Dust Dragon will send from your deck to the graveyard the Albion Dragon, if you didn't already open it. If you did already open it, you can send the Brigade, or you can send the Albion Dragon. And your Saronir will Foolish Burial a branded card, which will be the Branded in white. You'll then use the Albion Shrouded Dragon to put it back to the bottom of the deck and Foolish Burial a card from your hand, or a branded from your deck, sorry, and that's going to be Retribution. Keep in mind, because it's in the graveyard, when it activates its effect, you will not get the random draw, but it still does give you the ability to set up everything you need. So your graveyard is now looking as follows. So you can now activate the Retribution. You're going to banish this to add the branded in white back to your hand. You're then going to activate the branded in white. You're going to banish your Fallen of Albaz from the graveyard, and then any dark monster. You don't want to be banishing the Cartesia. You could banish the Aluber if you want to, but you might as well be using your graveyard. So you're going to banish the Saronir. You're then going to be able to summon out your Lubellion. There you go. You'll then be able to trigger Lubellion's effect, and this is where the random discard comes into play. So you discard that, and this will then allow you to spin back 2 materials. So you want to be able to spin back a light and a dark, or you can go straight into a Mirror Jade, which is exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to spin back Albaz to the main deck, and you're going to spin back Lubellion to the extra deck, and you're going to go into your Mirror Jade. Now, keep in mind as well, because you've got rid of all the Albazes, until you're able to get another card to the graveyard, you're not going to be able to, like, you'll loop back the Cartesia because you will get a fusion into the graveyard, but you won't be able to get the Cartesia to be special summoned out the next turn until you get an Albaz. But, you know, cross that bridge when you get to it. Anyway, from this point, what you want to do is you want to use Mirror Jade's effect. You're going to send a card as cost, and this is, I mean, actually, to be fair, this isn't so bad. This is actually another way, another like cool little tech. So you send the Albion as cost. You then trigger the Rimbrum's effect. Rimbrum will then negate the Mirror Jade, and you can choose to return a monster from the field to the hand. So you actually get to choose to return the Albion. This is still your graveyard. So you got your Albion here, and then what you do now is that you move to the end phase. Now Mirror Jade has been negated, but it's still active during the next turn because you've negated all of its effects. So during the end phase, you can actually add back the Cartesia to the hand. You get to use Albion's effect. This can either search you out a branded fusion, but probably what you want to go for a little bit more, just checking what we've got in the graveyard, is you're probably going to want to go for something like a Retribution, maybe a branded in red if you can get a target to the graveyard, or of course this is a route where you could go through Expulsion as well. Keep in mind the Albion wasn't successfully summoned. That's where the Lubellion comes in a little bit more clutch. So you kind of want to be adding something that's going to provide some form of disruption if your opponent sets it up for you as well. So entirely up to you on what you want to set. Let's go for just Expulsion for now. The best thing about this as well is technically, as long as there's 2 monsters in the graveyard, you could in theory bring back, or even banished actually, you could in theory use Mirror Jade's effect, send one as cost, you're setting up another Albion or an Albion Artist for the next turn. Then you activate Expulsion, tributing off the Mirror Jade to target 2 non-fusions that are banished or in the graveyard. So you can bring back the Mirror Courier, and you can also bring back the Saronir, which is really kind of cool. Both to your board. So just an alternative option. That's just to kind of show you what you can do without the Lubellion. Obviously, if you do have Lubellion there, rather than adding the card of Aluber back to the hand during the from the Rimbrum effect, you actually get to add the branded Beast to the end phase, and Beast to the end board and everything else as well. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. I hope this is, for all of you out there that asked for this, I hope this is kind of giving you an idea of where to start, where you can build from if you've got the new cards, and if you're wanting to look forward to going into the new format with this particular deck. As I've said before, if you do have any questions, by all means, please put them in the comments down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. And if you want to see more content of this deck, then again, also, please make sure you smash that like button, get the video above 50 likes in the first 24 hours, and I will bring that for you. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, guys, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.